Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of She Talks Business. I am here again with my lovely niece, Mackenzie, because on this season, she is the one asking me all of the questions. And if you are listening to this on release day, which is December 22nd, I hope that you have been nice all year and not naughty, and that Santa is coming to see you soon. We decided to release this episode a couple of days early because we figure most of you don't want another email in your inbox on Christmas Day. So let me tell you a little bit about my niece in case you missed the last episode. Mackenzie is a wellness counselor who specializes in the menstrual cycle, and she is on a mission to serve those who struggle with period problems through holistic practices. She uses her background and education in psychology and her diploma in wellness counseling to help people feel heard and offer alternative solutions so that they can not only feel their best, but have a better period naturally. And today we're going to talk a little bit about social media. I got to tell you, I'm feeling a little on the hot seat because I have this millennial niece of mine who is going to ask me, I think you're a millennial, right?
I don't actually know what I am. I'll have to look it up.
I think you're a millennial. I have this millennial niece of mine who's going to ask me, old lady Lisa, questions about social media marketing. So, Mackenzie, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Amazing. Thank you. I believe you are the best person to be in the hot seat for this. And I have so much to learn, especially as I switch to a more business social media marketing rather than social media as a personal tool. And I wanted to start off with a question that has been on my mind a lot, and I'm sure has been on a lot of people's minds who is just starting out, is how often do you recommend posting on Instagram for a new business?
Lots. So, here's the thing, the algorithm doesn't show you every single post that somebody makes. If you look at your post data, if you look at the number of impressions that you get on a post and you compare the number of impressions that you get on a post to the number of people who follow you, chances are there's a small percentage of people who follow you that actually see the post. And it's not even just the people who follow you that see the post. So if you have 1,000 people following you, for example, and your post gets 100 views, that means up to 10% of your followers, saw it, because it could be that you used a hashtag that somebody is following and they saw your post because they're following a hashtag.
Mm.
So when you look at those numbers, there is this there's this misbelief that if I post more, I'm going to annoy people because I'm going to be in their feed all the time. You're not, because you're not in their feed all the time already. So unless
Mm.
you look at your numbers and you see, okay, out of my 1,000 followers, I've had 2,000 impressions, well, then maybe you could scale back a bit because you're reaching twice as many people who are as following you. But if the numbers don't support that, then you have nothing to worry about. So
Mm.
what I would say is focus more on quality than quantity. You can post once, twice, three times a day. You can take your posts and put them in stories, but focus on the quality of content that you are providing over the frequency of content. You do need volume, but you can have a lot of volume that isn't very good and people are going to ignore you. Or you can have a decent amount of volume and really good content, and then people are going to engage with you. So I know that myself, I think I post once or twice a day on Instagram, and I also put things in stories. If I was starting my business out and I was brand new, I would probably be posting 4 to 5 times a day if it was me. And you may want to ask me this, but there are also certain content formats that I would be using.
Yeah, that's definitely another. There's so many questions just from that one answer of, I guess I'll start with, you mentioned some like reach and looking at your insights. And I know when I go into there, all I see is the amount of numbers that I don't, or the amount of accounts that I don't see. And had sent you a text about that of none of my posts are getting likes, and you had said don't get caught up in the vanity metrics. I would love if you could just explain a little of what those insights are telling us, what those numbers are telling us, and maybe what's the best to look at. Like, what are we looking for when we look at those insights?
Well, to be honest, in the very beginning, I think you should ignore them because I don't think they really matter. You can look at them over time and see how things have improved. But when you look at the insights on a post, you are essentially looking at a snapshot in time. You are looking at the insights for that post right now. It's like looking at your bank account and seeing how much money you have in your bank right at this minute. But then you go to the grocery store and you buy 3 dozen eggs and the number changes. So
Mm.
the numbers, the insights change depending on how people interact with the content on a regular basis. Have you ever gone on Instagram and went back to a post that you saw before because you wanted to look at it again or you wanted to share it with somebody? Well, that post could be a week old. I mean, you and I, when you were here, we made short ribs together. And I had to go find that recipe and I had to share it with you because you did most of the cooking because I was working in my office that day. So that post was posted weeks ago. But
Mm.
I'm still going back to it and I'm still sharing it. And when I make short ribs, I go back to it again because I have it saved. So your insight is just a snapshot in time right now. What you should be looking at is trends. So if you look at trends and you say, okay, within the first 24 hours, this piece of content got, I don't know, 24 views, and that piece of content got 36 views, but this other piece of content got 300 views. Well, what was different about the piece of content that got 300 views from the two that didn't get as many views? What can you learn from that so that you can create more content that is the type of content that people want to consume? Look for patterns. And you can't really develop patterns unless you look at something for a long period of time, which means you need to be consistent for a long period of time in order to identify the patterns. In my business, we do social media marketing implementation for a lot of our clients. And when they start working with us, we tell them not to expect results until the second 6 month period. We tell them that the first 6 months, the first 90 days, we're really just getting going.
Mm.
And you're starting that flywheel, you're starting to get things going. In the next 90 days, we're iterating based on how people are responding to things. It's the 6 month period after where people typically start to get some engagement. They start to get some inbound leads. They start to get more comments on their stuff. And
Mm.
so I think sometimes we worry too much about the insights at the very beginning and not enough about just producing good quality content that's going to be helpful for people and getting a good volume of it out there. And I think that's what you need to really focus on first.
Wow, that is not the response I was expecting, but I just feel a huge weight off my shoulders. It felt like a permission slip to focus on the creation of the content rather than getting caught up in the numbers and not even really knowing what I'm supposed to be looking for. And
I,
what,
can,
yeah.
I just want to tell you, like, I love numbers. Okay. Like, I
Mhm.
love numbers, love numbers. But let's make sure we look at the numbers that matter. The numbers that matter are how many people are doing business with you. It's
Mm.
not how many people are looking at your stuff. And so, I am regularly asked to be on summits. And people come to me and they're like, "We want to know how big your mailing list is." "Oh, you don't have that many people on your mailing list, therefore you cannot be on our summit." And I'm like, "Okay.
Mhm.
So, because I don't have 10,000 people on my mailing list, you think that I am a big freaking failure, but I have coached people with 10,000 people on their mailing list that generate $100,000 a year in sales, and I'm generating multi seven figures. So, who do you think has a more engaged mailing list?" So,
Mm.
numbers in isolation, like they don't always those numbers don't always mean anything. You have to look at the numbers with context. You have to look at the numbers to say, I might have a small audience, but I've got a big business. Or I might have a big audience and I've got a small business, but maybe your business model is more of a commodity type thing where you're selling small revenue generating items, which means you need a big business. Whereas I'm selling bigger ticket items. I don't need a big number of people interacting with my stuff. So I just think that we have to be careful
Mm.
that we're looking at the most important numbers. Just because you can measure it doesn't mean that it's an important measurement.
Mm. Just because you can measure it doesn't mean it's an important measurement. I'm gonna sit with that one. That's really, really helpful. Um, And I think it's been interesting with because it gave me a lot to think about. you called them vanity metrics. And I was wondering for myself if that comes from having used it specifically for social media as a social network rather than social media marketing and getting caught up in the likes and the engagement. And what would your advice be to someone who is switching from using the platform in one way that they were used to now it being a business, part of their business?
I think that you are still you as a person.
Mm.
And so, what you're choosing to do now is you're choosing to use your platform to educate and share value with people who might be interested in the subject matter expertise that you have to offer. That doesn't mean that you can't still show up as you as a person. I
Mm.
share all kinds of stuff on social media that's related to money and marketing and sales and content marketing, but I also share pictures of my dogs. I share pictures of travel. I share sunsets and sunrises. So I think it's you are an individual. And
Mhm.
people are going to be interested in doing business with you, not just because of what you know, but how you make them feel, how they resonate with you.
Mm.
So don't get all corporate because now you're talking about your business and forget to be the person that people already know, like, and trust. You need to sprinkle both things in.
Mhm.
Otherwise, your business is going to feel very cold and impersonal. It's not going to feel like you. And if you're doing this through a channel that has your name on it versus a channel that is like Instagram or Coca-Cola, like we don't
Mhm.
expect there to be a person that we're going to resonate with. There's a brand voice and message that we may want to resonate with. But when you are the face of your company, which you are the service provider, just like I'm the service provider, there needs to be resonance with the people that are engaging with your content. And so it's important to have a mix of both.
Mm.
You need to show your personality in your expertise.
And how would you recommend someone do that? Like we talked about the lived experience, the validity of that, but how do you weave the personal story into the education, the offering, the services to make it still not so like, how do you find that balance of me and you, and even maybe the language that's best used in those circumstances?
I think, again, it depends on what you're sharing. So I think that for me, I'm always trying to find a metaphor or a story or meaning to weave into some of the personal things that I share. And
Mm.
sometimes if I'm sharing a bottle of wine, it might be, I'm celebrating a great week in my business, or I might share a picture of food and it might be I'm out for dinner, I'm at a client event or I'm out for dinner with a client. I try to weave some of those things in together so people can see some of the personal sides of me as well as my professional side. I posted a picture not too long ago, and it was a picture of Faith sitting on the pillow on my chair in my office. And I said, someone's reporting for work. So I'm incorporating a little bit of lightness into the other stuff that I do. I think there needs to be a healthy balance of eye contact, eye content versus you content. And so what I mean by that is I could put a post on Instagram and I could say, if you want to be successful in marketing, here's what I do. I create a content calendar. I create nicely branded images. I record videos 7 times a week. I. And when somebody's reading that, how it lands with them is, yeah, but Lisa, that's you.
Mm.
Whereas if I flipped it around and I said, if you want to create a really great social media strategy, here are 7 things that you can do. You could create a content plan. You could record videos. You could pre-plan content. Now, when I'm reading it, the person it's reading as though I'm giving advice to the person reading it versus I'm talking about myself.
Mm.
Now, the context of that makes sense.
Mhm.
But if I'm out having dinner, or if I just finished reading a book and I'm saying, I learned so much from this book, here are 7 things I learned, it's okay for me to use I because the context is different. And
Right.
so it's using judgment around how much is about me versus how much is about you. If I'm sharing what I've learned, then using I language from time to time is okay. But I could also take that book and I could say, okay, here's a copy of a book. It's called Who Not How. Here are 3 reasons you might want to read this book. And I could still turn it around to a you conversation. It just takes practice. So I think
Mm.
it's just trying to blend some of the personal stuff in. I think using stories. I think that, you know, stories and metaphors are really powerful ways to convey a message. And I think remembering when you are writing that not everyone knows what you know. So always lend context to the description of what you are talking about.
Can you expand on that?
Context.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use what you talk about. So cycle syncing. I
Mhm.
have no idea what cycle syncing is. I've never heard that term before until you started talking about it.
Right.
So, you know, if you have a post and it's cycle syncing, give me some context. For
Mm.
those of you who are not familiar with cycle syncing, let me tell you what it is and let me tell you what this means. So I'm providing context around the information that I am about to share with you. Sometimes we are so close to things that we think that other people understand what
Mhm.
it is and they don't.
Yes, I am definitely bumping up against that in my own sharing of what level of knowledge did I start with and trying to come from that place. And I'm curious around like how, for example, my personal story, I think that would add a lot of context
Mhm.
to what I'm offering. And I still haven't found the right way to share that. Is there a right way? Doesn't sound like there is, but yeah.
Sure, there is.
Mhm.
So you could record a video and you could introduce yourself. Hi, Mackenzie. Here's my, let me tell you my personal story and why I care so much about helping people who have problems with their period. And you could tell your story. And
Mm.
then what you could do is you could actually pin that post on your profile, or you could add it to one of your little featured sections so that people could watch it anytime they wanted. And if you pin it to the top of your profile, then, you know, once a month or every so often, you could actually reshare it on Instagram, you know, for, hey, for new followers, in case you haven't read my story, here it is for you. And you can reuse that content. But people behave sometimes like, oh, I posted that. I can't do anything with it again. You
Mhm.
can. If you go to my Thought Readers account on Instagram, you will see, I'm going to show you, and I'm not sure if you've seen it or not. And I know you guys are probably not watching this, but you can see we have pinned content at the top.
Mm.
You can
Mhm.
pin content. You can pin 3 pieces of content at the very, very top. And it can be, you know, new to cycle syncing, watch this. Want to know my story? Watch this. But video is the biggest driver of
Mhm.
engagement and views on Instagram. It's, you know, I use a bunch of stuff. I use visuals as well. Swipables are better than static images. Videos are better than swipables. Sometimes people put swipables into videos, and that's a good idea too. But you want to try to create some movement in the feed because that's what captures people's attention. The other thing you want to be careful of when you are using images with copy is you want to consider accessibility and how easy or difficult it is for people to read. So you want to be mindful of font sizes and you want to be mindful of color contrast. Because if the color contrast isn't stark enough and it's hard for people to read, they're just going to swipe by it because the words didn't jump out at them. So
Mm.
you are better to have more swipes with bigger font than less swipes with more font on it because it's the word that's going to capture my attention, right? So when I'm working with my team, I always say, what's the hook? What's the cliffhanger? That's what I
Mm.
say, not what is the hook. I always ask Cass Bald and I always talk about this. What is the cliffhanger? What is the reason that I would want to swipe? you got to give me a little something, something to make me want to learn more. And it's got to be readable at a glance. I shouldn't have to, really stop and dig into it. And it's the same with captions on a reel. You want your captions to be large enough that it's easy for people to read.
Wow. I'm
Because
going to be,
I will tell you, women are cycling into their 50s.
mhm.
So, people will be, it's not just people your age that may be consuming your content. So you want to be mindful of the fact that a lot of people after the age of 40, their eyes aren't as good as they once were. And I think all of us are running into eyesight issues because we spend so much time on blue screens.
Yeah, you covered so many different really important pieces of making the feed dynamic, the attention, the even the font, which is something that you and I talked about of how big, the contrast, and um, that kind of brings me back to where we started. And you said maybe you want to ask me this, but what is the best content to be sharing? What best forms, and even what would you recommend those three pinned posts be for any business?
Well, with respect to the three pin posts, I think it depends on the business. So I think it's going to be different for every single business. I think the question you need to ask yourself is, if somebody was viewing my profile, what are the three most important things I would want them to know? And
Mm,
so for if your business, if you want them to know your story, then that should be pinned. If you want them to know what something like cycle syncing is, you want to pin that. If you want them to know about a program or you want them to know about the cycle mag, then talk about that. Like figure out what your three priorities are. And
mm.
then, here's the thing, make a decision, pin the three damn things, move on. And if something else comes along that becomes more important, take one down and pin it. It's not permanent, it's a pin.
Right.
So, don't agonize over it. Just do it and see how it does. If it's pinned there, are you getting more views every single week? And if you are, then you know that people are consuming the content.
Mm,
So that's the first thing. And in terms of the content formats that work the best, I am always interested in, I like watching videos as long as they have captions.
mm,
A large percentage of people watch videos with the audio turned off. So captions are super important. I also like swipeable content, but I like swipeable content that's got a good hook on the first swipe. I would
mm.
like stuff that's going to teach me something. It's going to educate me in some way. Um, I think those are probably the two best forms of content. And then, of course, you've got stories. And so you can take your content from your feed and share it in stories. If you're going to share somebody else's story, add context. I see a lot of people, they just click share and they never put their own little commentary in. And so people do that with me all the time. I'm like, why'd you share that? Well, you shared it. That's great. I just got a notification, but did you like it?
Yeah.
What's up? So I think it's important that you are engaging with the content that you share too, and that you're adding more context when you use that in stories. A lot of people just swipe through stories. They don't swipe through the feed. So remember to cross promote. If you put it in a story, you can use it again later in the feed. And if you put it in the feed, you can share it again later as a story.
Mm.
Don't think, oh my God, everybody saw that, because they didn't.
I am guilty of that. I'm like, oh my goodness, everyone is watching and seeing everything I'm posting, but they're
Mm,
not.
they're
And that's okay. And this is, yeah, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I like to do is I like to go back to Instagram and I like to look at my videos, and I like to look at what were my most popular videos. And then I'll see one that's got a ton of views and I will share it on my stories again. Or I'll see one that doesn't have a lot of views and I'll bump it into my stories and see what happens. And a couple days later, I'll bump it in again. I'll actually keep bumping it to see if I can get more views on that story by virtue of keeping it alive in the newsfeed. Because I know not everyone, like I have a video on here with Mark Schaefer from a thought readers interview that I did with him. It's got 44 views. Mark is brilliant. So if I share that again and again, I keep putting it up there, I'm going to get more views on it. More people are going to find it. I know that. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of it's gotten buried in the newsfeed. Because if I go to, there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts since that one went up there. And so if I come back to these once a week and I just recycle through some of that content and reshare it, it's helping me. It's not hurting me. Like,
Mm,
here's the thing. Has anybody ever come to you and said, oh my God, you shared something twice? No,
that
not at
person has
all.
a lot of time on their hands, I think. And what's striking me about everything we've talked about in this episode and the last one is the story we tell ourselves about what's going on with this app. And hearing you talk about it, it sounds like a tool. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can go in and reshare. And it sounds so much more approachable than the story I have. And I think a lot of people have, oh, someone, it's less personal. Someone didn't like it or didn't see it or it's too much.
But in fairness, you grew up at in a different time than I grew up.
Mm,
So I think it's important to discuss this. You are in your mid 20s. You grew up during a time where kids use social media to bully each other. And so there's a lot of young people out there that do feel like some of their friends from school are watching everything they do because that's what it was like when you were in high school or maybe when you were in university, but you're not there anymore.
mm.
And you're growing your audience and expanding your community beyond those days. And so I think it's important to, recognize you may feel that way because of what it was like when you were in school, but you're not in school anymore. You're an adult now. And those kids, like, who cares? They care about the people that matter to you, not so much about the people who have opinions that don't matter.
It's so interesting you bring that up, and that's really validating. And it is important to talk about the differences of this because it's not a neutral territory, social media, and how limiting that can actually be. And I just really value that you're calling attention to that. It's valid that I and other people would feel this way, and we're not in that state anymore. I'm not in high school by a long shot.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that was really validating to hear. Do you
Okay, fine.
find a difference in your clients when you are working with someone who did grow up with social media versus who didn't? Just out of curiosity.
It's interesting. My youngest clients tend to use social media the least. And
Hmm.
the clients that I have that are my age and older tend to be the people that really want to lean into using social media as a marketing tool. And so maybe there is some validity there. Like maybe there is some um, you know, baggage, trauma, emotional sensitivity, because when you grew up with it, you had to be really careful because you didn't want to get bullied using it. And I can appreciate and respect that. I mean, I wrote a chapter in a book many years ago and you helped me with that chapter. And I remember you being the one who told me about Vague Book and some of the mean things that kids would do where they would post something about something on social media and then a bunch of other people would go say, oh, they're talking about you, but nobody really knew who they were talking about, but they would make you think that you were the topic of conversation. That's pretty mean stuff. So I can see how having dealt with that would make you feel self-conscious about what other people might be saying on your social media posts or saying behind your back on social media. Whereas I didn't have social media in high school. I think Facebook came out. I was 36 when Facebook came out.
Mm.
So I didn't have that same lived experience. So maybe I'm not as cautious, or maybe people who are older than me are not as cautious because we haven't had those experiences.
That's so interesting. And I was expecting you to say that people who are younger use it more often. And I'm someone who has struggled with, oh, I want to grow this business and I enjoy these things on social media. But how do you balance being on social media with the desire to disconnect?
Um, I have desires to disconnect too. I
Mhm.
think that, there are scheduling tools out there that allow you to post content so that you've got content going up even when you're not using social media. I think that you can create lines in the sand and say, hey, I'm going to check social media twice a day or three times a day. I'm going to spend X amount of time, posting and engaging and checking on things and stick to a routine like that. I don't think that it has to be all or nothing. I think it can be a little bit of both. I think you can give yourself a break, take a weekend off or whatever. But I do think that if you're using social media for business, and
Mhm.
you are inviting your customers to interact with you on a channel like that, it's a good idea to check the channel at least once every 24 hours or at least once every 48 hours at maximum, so that if somebody has reached out to you, you don't leave them hanging. One of
Mhm.
the things that really irks me is when businesses have all of these channels set up and I reach out to them on the channel that I want to do business on, and then they never get back to me because they set up this channel and they set up automation on posting, but they didn't monitor the channel and therefore they didn't monitor the messages. So they left customers feeling like you really don't care about them.
That's really good to keep in mind, and that those boundaries can exist. And like we talked about many times, the gray area doesn't have to be black or white. And we've covered so much already. And I was wondering if you'd be okay with a bit of a pivot.
Sure.
Something that I think is really beneficial is the argument or the debate or the, I guess, decision between keeping a business as your name versus having a brand. And I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about that, and what are the benefits or drawbacks to each, and when is one better than the other?
Well, again, it depends. It depends on the business and it depends on the exit strategy of the business. So, if you are building a business that you want to one day sell, it's very hard to sell your name. And so, if you're building a business that is going to have a lot of employees, like a team and a customer base, a customer list that is sellable, products and or services that are sellable to somebody else, then you are better to have a brand name than an individual name. If you have a business and you are the face of the business and you are the only person doing the fulfillment, then my recommendation is you use your name,
Mm.
because people are buying from you. They're not buying from an entity. I don't know the president's name of Coca-Cola, but I know who Coca-Cola is. But Coca-Cola is a commodity based offering, right? Like you can buy Coke anywhere. And so it's a consumer product that people are very familiar with and knows. And so the brand was built around that. No different than when we owned our microbrewery. When we owned our microbrewery, it was built around the microbrewery brand. It wasn't built around our names because it was a standalone brand that didn't reflect on us. It didn't need us to interact with customers for the brand to be successful. When you have a service-based business that is all you, then your reputation and brand starts to attach to you. And
Mm.
when people start to talk about you to other people, if you have a company name, but your business is really you, then people tend to get confused by the business name versus the person's name. And so I have seen some people, they start with a business name and then they realize, well, you know what? It's really just me. So then they move to a personal brand and they make it all about them. And then a few years later, they've hired a team and now they've actually got something that's bigger than just them. And they want the business to be reflective of the rest of the team. And they make another move to change the name of the business so that it's not their name. So I do think that it's not a black or white decision. You do have the ability to flex and change as your business changes. But I think it depends on what name is the customer going to use when they talk about the business. Is the customer going to say, I work with Lisa Larter? Or is the
Mm.
customer going to say, I work with Godaxi? Or is the customer going to say, I work with Lisa Larter's team? It's no different with you. Is the customer going to say, I work with Mackenzie? Or is the
Mm.
customer going to say, I work with the Cycle Mag? In the beginning, they're probably going to say, I work with Mackenzie. So I would want to elevate and make it easy for people to find me by my name in that case.
Mm. What I'm really hearing in all this advice is that it's not black or white, like that you have the ability to change, and just starting where you are. Like I am an individual right now. It is just me, therefore the personal brand makes the most sense. That doesn't mean I'm locked in.
100%. And even big companies that buy other big companies go through co-branding phases. When I worked for ClearNet and TELUS acquired ClearNet, for the first year after TELUS acquired ClearNet, ClearNet operated as ClearNet. Nothing changed in the branding. And then the second year, there was co-branding. It was ClearNet and TELUS on everything. And by year 3, TELUS had taken over the brand. So,
Mm.
big organizations can navigate brand changes and name changes. So small businesses like ours can do the same.
I'd never thought of it that way, and that there is always a transition period in those terms as well. And as we were talking, I was reminded of another aspect of social media that you actually told me was really important. And you asked if I was engaging with other accounts. Could you talk a bit more about that? That it's not just the posting that's happening on Instagram or Facebook or any social media platform.
Right. You have to decide, are you a broadcaster or are you an engager? Are you talking at people or are you talking with people? Social media is supposed to be social, which
Mm.
means you're supposed to be socializing, interacting with people online. The whole reason that I started using social media is because I was tired of going to in-person networking events morning, noon, and night. I used to go to networking events in the morning, and then I go in the afternoon, and then I go in the evening, and it was exhausting. And I realized, hey, I could have conversations with people that I want to do business with online, and I could do it from the comfort of my home, or I could do it from my office. So it's important that you show up in other people's feeds. And the way that you show up in other people's feeds and stay top of mind is by interacting with their their content. In my book, I have a whole chapter called Be a Swift Marketer. And a swift marketer means see what's in it for them. When we use social media, it's always with them. What's in it for me? Let's be honest. What's the first thing you do when you log into Instagram? You check your notifications and you check your messages because you want to see me, who mentioned me, who tagged me. That's what you want to see. So when you become a Swift marketer, you show up in those mentions for other people, but you never show up in those mentions if you don't actually engage with them.
So logging onto Instagram or a social media, what's a mindset shift? Because I, like a lot of people, are trained to just log in, check our notifications, me. And even when you had sent me that text, I started to engage with it from that place of what's in it for me. So what's a way to engage that is more swift forward?
So, what you can do if you have customers, write a list of who your customers are and make it a habit to go look at your customers' accounts on social media on a regular basis and engage with them, interact with them, comment on their stuff. You're asking about your insights and engagement. They feel the same way. Who's engaging with them? And if
Mm.
there are people that you want to build a relationship with or you want to do business with, then interact with them, comment on some of their posts, give them some encouragement. If there are people posting about content that is relevant to the work that you do, comment and share. Like every so often, Gary Vaynerchuk will post something on Instagram, and I make a game out of seeing how many likes I can get on the comment that I leave. Like it's just a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that when I add value to someone else's post in the comments become their own engaging community. And then those people seek you out because they want to know more about you because of what you shared. So if you were searching for things like period pain or cycle syncing or, all of the stuff, the keywords that you use in your business and on your website, the some of the, I know you're not a fan of the word conditions, but I don't remember what we talked about. It's like the symptoms that people have.
Yeah.
So if you were to search the symptoms and you were to see what people are saying, and you were to actually comment and give people some insight or advice, hey, I've had experience with this too, you might want to try ABC. People are going to pay attention to you because you're actually showing up and you're trying to be helpful.
Mm. I'd never seen social media like a networking event. Like now I'm seeing it as my little avatar going into the
Yes.
internet space and networking. So that's a really cool mindset shift.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You can have conversations there just like you would in person, except you can talk to as many people as you want. Another tip, if you are part of any groups, let's say on Facebook, is to search questions. So there's always a little search magnifying glass inside of every group community you're part of. You can search the word question, or you can just search a question mark. And any posts where people have said, I have a question, or they post a question with a question mark, you can look at those posts and you can see, oh, can I add value here? Can I answer the question? If you
Hmm.
can answer the question, that's a great way to engage in the content with them.
There's so much I'm learning. I'm so grateful that we're doing this. How much time should one be committing to social media in general, whether it's networking, whether it's posting, are those separate buckets? Just what's the time commitment? Because I'm sitting here really inspired, want to grab my notebook, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, how much time is too much time?
I
Is
think it depends on where you're at in your business. So, what I always say to people is you need to step on the gas when you're trying to get business, you're trying to grow your business, but you don't want to take your foot off the gas the minute you get business. So, some people what they do is they go all in and then they get a customer and then they stop. So you want to be consistent and you also want to be reasonable in the amount of time that you spend there. So if you decide I'm going to spend an hour a day, 30 minutes twice a day and I'm going to do this and you create a little plan for yourself and you make a list of the things that you're going to do. I'm going to post twice a day. I'm going to go and I'm going to find 3 people to comment on. I'm going to, search X number of groups. I'm going to follow Y number of people. Like, if you create a little plan for yourself, then you can manage how much time it takes. But I will tell you, when I first started my business,
Mhm.
I spent a lot more time on social media than I do now. I spent hours a day on social media because I didn't have customers. And so, because I didn't have customers, I was having conversations in direct messages and I was looking for more places where I could learn and I could engage and I could interact with people so that I could grow the business. That's being intentional about using social media to grow your business. What's not intentional is this, just
Mm.
mindlessly consuming everyone else's content. Get in there and have
Mhm.
conversations with people. It will help you more than just consuming.
Yeah, I'm really hearing the importance of the engagement and even not getting caught up in other people's content because it can be really discouraging, and that fine line of following people who are in your sphere versus getting discouraged by, oh, everyone's already made the content.
Everyone's not you. I
Mm.
mean, I'm probably people look at me as a business coach or a business advisor or a marketing expert. They call me one of those 3 things. And, first of all, I don't think I'm a marketing expert. I think I'm a marketing generalist. I think I understand how to drive business. I understand how to use marketing as a tool to get customers. But, there's thousands and thousands, if not millions of people out there that call themselves a coach. I just
Mhm.
don't pay attention to that. I pay attention to my little bubble and my little world and what can I do to add value? How can I show up and do what I can do? Because I can only control what I can control. However,
Mhm.
we'll say there are people out there that I look at as role models and an inspiration for what is possible. I don't look at them as making me feel bad about myself. I
Mm.
look at them and I go, oh, wow, look how many followers they have. Wow, look at that post. That was really good. I could have said that. I should have said that. Like I look at it and I look at it as it's like, I feel like it's the universe tapping me on the shoulder to say, you could be playing a bigger game here, Lisa. I
Mm.
don't look at it as, oh, it's too late for me.
And then what's an action step after you have that? Oh, I could have said that. I should have said that. How do you turn that into motivation?
Sometimes I take their post and I share it with my team and I say, here's an example of a post that I want to create. And here's some content, like my words, my way. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes I will jump on and create a video based on what I saw. Uh, Sometimes I'll open my notepad and I'll just type out some ideas and then I'll take those ideas and I'll share them with my team and I'll use them later.
Mm.
So, I try not to let the idea die. Like I wrote a blog post years and years ago called Dancing with the Idea Fairy. And it was after I read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. And
Mhm.
she talks about this idea fairy. And, I believe that when ideas come to you, you have to act on them. And if you don't act on them, they leave you and somebody else will act on them. So I try to acknowledge the idea fairy when the idea fairy's around me and actually do something with the idea. I might not be able to finish it, but I try to do something with it. This morning
Mhm.
I posted, I started a Google Doc and I called it Social Media Musings. And I just started, writing some random things because I spend a lot of time reading in the morning. And sometimes when I read or I'm on a walk, I get these insights or I think of things and then I don't do anything with them. So now I've actually started a Google Doc that I can share with my team where I write these things down. Because last night I didn't sleep very well. I woke up at like 1:15 and I couldn't fall back to sleep. And so I started listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast episode, and he was interviewing somebody that on the topic of sleep. And then, of course, I'm really listening to this conversation because it's about sleep and I can't sleep. And when the alarm went off this morning, I said to my husband, I didn't sleep well last night. I was awake from 1:15 to 3:15 listening to a podcast on sleeping because I couldn't sleep. And we were supposed to go to the gym this morning. And he's like, do you still want to go to the gym? He's like, you don't have to, we can take a break. If you want to get some extra sleep, that's okay. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll just set the alarm for later. And so I set my alarm for 7:15. And then a couple minutes later, I rolled over. He was on his phone. I rolled over. I said, no, let's go. We're going to go to the gym. I don't feel like it, but I know I need to do it.
Mhm.
And I I know that staying in bed for another 45 minutes isn't going to change my day. And so even though I don't feel like doing this right now, I'm going to actually do it. And so then this morning I wrote a little thing about, when you don't feel like doing something, sometimes it's motion that changes the emotion. Right. It was
Mhm.
getting out of bed. I was in my closet putting my workout stuff on, and he's like, wait, are we going to the gym? I'm like, yeah, I'm getting dressed, get up. Right. So it's like sharing little things like that from your own life, like those little ideas. And when you have them, just write them down somewhere and then you can use them later. You don't have to use them the minute you think them, but capture
Mhm.
them someplace. And I like to use Google Docs or notes on my phone to do that.
That's really helpful. And what I'm hearing is just small actionable steps. Doesn't have to be the whole, I don't have to create a post start to finish just because I saw a post that inspired me, and learning how to dance with the idea fairy or that magic.
Save the post,
Yeah.
save it, and go back and look at it later and say, hey, here's a saved post. What inspired me? What could I create that's similar to this? Because I find sometimes what happens, the story I tell myself is that, oh, I shouldn't write my opinion on that thing right now because that person is going to think that I'm writing because of them. Because in some cases, I will see colleagues of mine in the marketing space or in the business coaching space write things that I think I don't agree with. And so then I want to write this thing and I want to have a contrarian perspective on it. But I don't want them to think that I'm trying to, diss them. So
Mhm.
I might write my little thing and I might wait a week or so and then I might post my thing because now it doesn't feel, I don't want my content to feel aggressive towards someone else because it's not intended that way. It's what they wrote actually inspired different thinking for me.
Mm.
The world deserves to see both sets of thinking and to decide which they agree with or which is going to land with them today. Because sometimes you may read something that someone wrote and you really resonate with it. And then 2 days later, you might read it and be like, no, I don't actually agree with that today. So, we're different beings all the time.
So just using it as a tool rather than making it mean anything about you or I as a person.
Exactly.
My last question is more of a rapid fire one. What are three quick things about social media that you wish everyone knew that was starting a business?
It's all about relationships. Done is better than perfect.
Mm,
And frequency and consistency matter.
those are all awesome, actionable, inspiring. I love advice that's like, I could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a post, somebody on my team put a post up for me a couple weeks ago, and there was a bracket in the post, and they forgot the other bracket. There was something that should have been in brackets, and I saw it, and I was like, but I would
Mhm.
just let it go. It wasn't perfect, but nobody died. It was like a typo. So,
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to let stuff like that go. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I mean, if you think of some of the most successful athletes in the world, how many baskets did Michael Jordan miss? Wayne Gretzky said, you'll never get what is it?
You miss
The,
100% of the shots you don't take.
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Mhm.
So you might as well take some shots. And not every shot is going to be a perfect one. Not every trip to the gym is perfect. I went to the gym 2 days ago and I was like, oh my God, I'm so weak today. I can't lift anything. Like, why am I so weak? I've been going to the gym for 3 weeks in a row now. Why am I so weak today? I should be getting stronger. And then the next time I went, I felt stronger. But so, like, the whole thing is, it's never going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect, but you are going to have some wins. So don't obsess over perfect. Just start.
Just start. That reminds me of the post you sent me about that it's not the Super Bowl. Like I have that in my head every time I post. Like not every post is going to be your knock it out of the park or your Super Bowl or, and yeah, it's not that serious.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's not. And you can always take a post and redo it and make it better. Nobody's there watching. Oh, Mackenzie deleted a post and redid it. Oh my God, call the social media police.
The reminder I needed today. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for asking me easy questions so that I actually look like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to
Oh,
social media, Mackenzie. That was awesome. So for those of you listening, thank you for joining us. We will be back again in a week's time. I'm not sure if we're going to post on the 29th or the 30th, or yeah, the 31st or the 1st. I don't know. We'll see. Depends on how our team is doing and what we think is better. Because I know that Christmas Day and New Year's Day are days that you probably don't want emails from me. You're going to have emails from everybody and their dog on New Year's Day telling you to do stuff to make your new year better. And I don't want to add to that noise because you already know what to do. So thank you for listening. And if you'd like to buy me a Christmas gift, I would like a positive review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. Thank you, Mackenzie, for being here and for asking such great questions. I love these impromptu conversations when I have no idea what you're going to throw at me. They're so much fun.
they're super fun. Thank you for doing this.
All right, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Have a nice break.